I'd like to tell you a few things about Nichelle you may not be aware of. I mean, she is quite the prodigious woman, and I absolutely love her to bits. Nichelle was born in Chicago and started out as a dancer. She loved to dance. And in fact, she married a dancer. And then, that wasn't enough. She also started singing, and she sang with Lionel Hampton and, wait for it, Duke Ellington. That's right. Nichelle sang with Duke Ellington. And then after the first year of doing Star Trek in 1967, Nichelle went into Gene and said, Gene, I don't want to do this anymore. And he was absolutely heartbroken. And he pleaded with her and he said, oh, Nichelle, please, please. And it was on a Friday. And there was nothing he could do to change her mind. She's quite a strong-willed woman. And after Gene realized he just couldn't get her to change her mind, he said, look, please, will you just think about it over the weekend and then come and see me during the week, please? And Nichelle said, sure, of course, Gene. Now, as things happen in life, Nichelle appeared at a charity function on the Sunday, I think it was. So the woman who ran the charity came up to Nichelle after she had appeared and she said, Nichelle, there's a really huge fan of yours outside who really wants to meet you, and he won't take no for an answer. So would you kindly, see him? And she said, sure, of course. And in walked Dr. Martin Luther King. And Nichelle said to me, she said, Paul, for the first time in my life, I was absolutely struck for words. I couldn't say anything. She said, my jaw dropped. And when she finally gathered her composure, she said, you're a fan? And he said, oh, yes, I am. And so they were talking, and then Nichelle said, well, I'm going to be leaving the show. And he was absolutely appalled. And he said, you can't do that. And Nichelle said, what do you mean I can't do that? I've turned in my resignation. And he said, no, Nichelle, you can't. She said, why not? And he said, you don't understand what a role model you are for black people in America. There are no black people on television. And that's true. In 1967, there were none. So Dr. Martin Luther King pleaded with Nichelle as well. So she was getting it from both sides, from Gene and now from Martin Luther King. And he pleaded and pleaded and pleaded with her. And he said, really, just please stay on the program. And so she said, well, I'll think about it. And she woke up Monday morning and she went in to see Gene. And even at that point, she hadn't decided that she was going to stay or that, she was going to insist on leaving. And she sat down in front of Gene and Gene got around the desk and gave her a hug. And he said, so have you thought about it? And she made her decision and she said, yes, I'll stay. So, and as a result of that, Whoopi Goldberg credits Nichelle with giving her the confidence, being a black woman, to get out there and become a comedian and an actress and a performer. And on top of that, you'll see in this little interview at her home that Nichelle is single-handedly responsible for recruiting women and minorities into the space program. Now, this interview I conducted with Nichelle over 2 years ago in her home was just a few months after her much-publicized stroke, so she was still recovering. But you'll get the measure of the woman she is. After the TV series, there was a bit of a time when nothing was happening. And then when they made the first movie that I worked on, painting the Enterprise, do you remember that they were thinking, well, okay, we'll make this movie and then that'll be all?
Oh, yeah, sure. And there were those who thought, we'll waste our time making this movie. But at least that'll be all.
And do you know that most of the astronauts credit Star Trek for inspiring them?
Absolutely. I recruited some of, did you know that?
No.
Oh. I was a NASA recruiter. They came to me and said, "We need you." And I couldn't say no. And they said, I think they weren't getting the response that they wanted.
Right.
And in recruits. And they said, "Well, would you consider coming aboard? We'll pay you." And I said, "No, you will not." And the next thing I knew, I was on board. I was their chief recruiter.
A bit like what you're doing with us.
Yeah,
Same thing.
yeah. Yeah, oh God, yeah, here we go again.
What a girl.
And they said, "You've got to get somebody to recruit the women and minority qualified people. They'll come in droves once they know you want them too." And so we did a commercial called "We Want You."
Oh, very good.
And they came in droves.
Well, that's fantastic. So you've had a lot to do with getting women on the as astronauts.
Oh yeah, I wasn't going to have anything to do with anything if that wasn't part of the program. "We'd like to contract you to do this and do it." I said, "No, I'm not doing, because I'd have to do it my way, and you're not ready for that." And they said, "That's exactly what we want. We want you to do it your way. But if I go out and recruit the people, I will bring you so many qualified women and men, black, white, yellow, brown, and red. And I don't want to see, I'm telling you this in front, I don't want to finish this with you using me, and it's still an all-white male astronaut corps." And those are my terms. And they said, "Okay."